All right, let's go ahead and get started. I know some more are coming to join us, but I'd like to honor those of you who got on early and get things rolling. I'm Lyle Hanna with the Hanna Research Group. We're delighted to have so many of you join us today. It's been a little while since our last meeting. We let things simmer down. It seemed like there was a whole lot of activity, and then it slowed down some, so we let some time go. But we're still going to hit the COVID-19 stuff, but we also, COVID-19 was such a big deal that we weren't hitting some of the HR things that were really challenging to people, like recruiting challenges. And part of that's caused by COVID-19. Part of it is just because the economy is starting back up in a pretty rich and robust way, and everybody needs a lot of people. Somebody else has jumped in here. Anyway, so let's get on with it today. HR and the legal toolkit. I'm getting some feedback on my end for some reason, but we got some unique things to share with you about recruiting. We think will be helpful for you because we're facing that every day also. We do a ton of recruiting, but we're also going to talk about some financial issues that are caused partly by COVID. So we've got a special guest. Christy Jackson is going to talk about talent acquisition, and Jim Trujillo is going to talk about some financial challenges that we're all facing. And of course, Jim is back, and Jim Morris is going to be giving us a great legal update. So let's jump on in here a little bit further. We want to do a poll real quickly because I'm curious. How many people are back at work? How many people have you all brought back? Quickly give us an answer here. In your organization, what % of your workforce is now working on site? Because boy, we know this is a challenge. So give us a little click on that and let us know what you think, just so we can all kind of see where that is.
How many of us never left?
Look at Jim sitting there in his office. Yeah. Well, we didn't ask that question, but a lot of people didn't. And a lot of people are challenged with coming back, though, and some people will never come back. They're going to just keep working people from home. And we'll be talking about that in some future weeks, too. So excited about it. So recruiting things, we got the student loan and some financial issues, and then we've got a great legal update for you. So let's move right into the recruiting issues. One more slide. There we go. Christy Jackson. Christy Jackson is part of our team in HRG, and we have 5 full-time recruiters, and I mean they are recruiting every minute. Last count we are trying to hire over 50 people every month for different employers around the country, and that doesn't include all the ones Christy's doing. So John Coffey is our head of recruiting and talent acquisition. John's on the line, and he's going to introduce Christy, and let's get this rolling. John, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I'm so excited for Christy to present to you guys today. We've got some really good information to share. So Christy just celebrated her 1-year anniversary with us at HRG. Congrats, Christy. And she's been working with Sazerac, really big company in the bourbon industry in New Albany, Indiana. Christy comes to us with several years of HR experience in the corporate and manufacturing industry. She's successfully applied strategic talent acquisition to all of the things that she's done in the HR space. And she's also the 2021 Director of Sponsorship and Foundation for the Louisville Society of Human Resource Management and the Human Resource Advocate for the National Society of Human Resource. She has her BA in Integrative Studies from Northern Kentucky University and an MS in Human Resources and Organizational Development from the University of Louisville. Originally from Paducah, Christy resides in Frankfort, Kentucky with her husband and children. In her spare time when she's not recruiting, which takes a lot of time, she's gardening outdoors, rooting against the Dallas Cowboys. So we might have some heated debates here, guys. And today I'm really excited for her to share some great information on how to combat some of these recruiting challenges we're seeing. Christy, take it away.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. I'm sure as many of you all who are looking or trying to recruit even a few roles, it has definitely been a challenge, and we continue to I hit highs and lows. Where I'm at right now is in New Albany, Indiana, recruiting for Sazarek's newest plant. And so they really face a challenge amidst, the pandemic and trying to recruit new talent for, just even frontline hourly employees. So, I mean, it's not just professional, it's also our frontline hourly employees, which, we have been checking away at our bottling technicians, processing technicians, maintenance, recruiting this whole year. And right now we're in crunch time because we have lines that are going to be ready to run and not enough people here to do so. So we have really had to come up with some innovative ways. So just to kind of start off some of the recruiting barriers that we've seen, and then as well as some of my colleagues, lack of candidate pool. And then you're just not seeing the flow of candidates that you might have seen even a year and a half ago or even a year ago. A lot of inadequacies of skill set. So you're seeing people that are applying that really don't have really that skill set that you're looking for. Our bottling technicians, even though that is a frontline hourly position, we do require quite a bit because they are technically, troubleshooting robotics. So we're looking for someone who's familiar with at least that, operations side of it. So, looking at, recruiting processes, the same recruiting processes that we might have done 2 years ago, but just do not, they're not applicable to today. So we're having to really examine those and take a hard look at them. And then just lengthy recruiting and onboarding process. We're in, when you're really trying to start up new lines or start up a manufacturing plant, you don't have time to really take your time and putting that together in just an organized fashion. Sometimes you've really got to get, steam underneath you and kind of move and get going. And so that we really tried to skinny down some of those processes and figured out what didn't work for us. So today I just wanted to kind of talk to you briefly about some of the marketing strategies that have worked for us, some that have not, reviewing some of our recruitment processing, like what you can do in recruiting, and reviewing those processes, how to skinny some things down or maybe even view them in a different manner, leveraging your technology. Obviously, we have moved to the digital age and moving over to technology, and people that were not familiar with, online interview process have now been acquainted with it at least. And then just identifying new hiring goals going forward. So on the next slide, so these are some of the marketing strategies that we tried to implement or have been or still ongoing. We do still do a lot of campaigning. We do a lot of brainstorming around marketing strategies. Television and radio advertisement is something that we are currently doing now. Sometimes it's hard to also to know if, all the applicants that we have coming through, if that's even, if they're seeing those, we definitely question them to see where they've heard about us. We've been spotlighted on workforce development groups. Kentuckiana Works, we partner with them, as well as Southern Indiana Works, since we're on the Indiana side, and done spotlights. Those are actually really beneficial. So if you do have a workforce development group that you're connected with, and if they're not even offering a spotlight, they might want to. We had probably about 20 people attend, and then I got 70 referrals from that. So that was a really great, it was a lot of Q&A, talking about the plant, the roles. So that was a really beneficial one. So if I encourage people, if you can get in touch with someone that's doing a spotlight, go for it. That's a great one. ID targeting campaigns, we're actually using El Toro currently. I think our run ends this week. So I always say this is a sneaky way of stalking candidates. So we just try to pick areas, since we're in, bourbon manufacturing, kind of industrial, we're targeting areas and industrial sites, like industrial parks, that people might be actually looking for work. So we've got a lot of hits, but again, not seeing a lot of return on investment on that just yet. But we're, sometimes it's hard to see right up front. Billboard advertising and yard signage. I've been using billboards since I think November of 2020. So we had 2 digital billboards and then 2 static billboards. Right now we're just running strictly the static boards. I think it's Reynolds up here in Louisville that I see a sign. I think every other sign is a Reynolds advertisement, and see a lot of people advertising via billboards right now. I think keeping it simple and just getting your name up there and that you're hiring, it's a great way to campaign, especially, you've got a lot of people on the road vacationing or just out and about, and it's a great way to kind of gravitate their attention that someone's hiring. We do utilize a referral incentive program here. It's a 90-day and a 6-month. They get a $250 on each one of those, so $500 bonus for anyone that an employee refers. We do a signing bonus for our electricians, but we are actually viewing right now the signing bonuses for just the hourly employees right now. So that's in the talks. So we're trying to see how that might work. Building relationships with our technical colleges and universities has been also crucial to job postings with them. Just overall having that connection. They may have people that are coming out. Electricians or maintenance teams are definitely hard to target. And so we can get people that are coming straight out of technical colleges or people that have that industrial background. That's just key for obviously manufacturing. We did utilize a drive-through job fair. We actually had quite a bit of a candidate flow for the first couple of hours. I would say that probably wasn't the greatest incentive we've had, even though we had a lot of people come through. A lot of them didn't pan out to interviews, or the ones that we did, I think we ended up only hiring maybe 2 from that job fair. So it's a great way to kind of get your name out there, but it wasn't necessarily the best flow for us getting actual hires. So then next, just kind of, things that we look at or we've done, reviewing the recruitment process, auditing that process, really kind of cleansing out, everything from job descriptions all the way to how we're bringing folks in. So, again, that applicant process, how we're screening them and how we're interviewing them, we really kind of put a lot of emphasis on the phone screen and make sure we were kind of vetting out candidates, making that a beneficial interview for the interview team so we can not have a second or a third interview process. So really, they're about a culture fit, as many places are. You're wanting to make sure you're bringing in the best candidate, but that phone screen was crucial. So worked really hard on making sure that we were targeting the things that they were looking for, making sure that if there's gaps in employment, filling those in, making sure that the hiring team that was going to interview had those guides. So really it was just making it more of a communication process across the board. So again, revising communication protocols. I have a team of 3 that are working on recruiting, and so making sure that they're updating me daily with what our recruiting numbers are, and so that I can skinny that all the way to the top, so that everybody knows what we're facing, things that are in the pipeline, and kind of the flow of how we're closing recs out. And then just improving the selection process. Again, revising, meeting with our teams, making sure that, we are getting the type of candidates that our hiring managers are looking for. Then on the next slide, I've got kind of leveraging technology. Virtual interviewing, again, for frontline employees, hourly employees, you're thinking, a lot of them have never done a virtual interview. So that was definitely something different. And so when we were faced with that, I put together and worked with a team to do a virtual tour. Culture videos obviously can be, utilized in these virtual interviews, but I think that it's important for people to actually see where they're applying to and what they are, might be walking into in a new position. So what that process looks like. So the virtual tour, it's a great tool that we really have been proud of putting together. So, and I think that's something that Sazerac specific for this plant can use for years to come. So it's definitely something they can utilize. Facebook and Google advertising, that's something that Facebook we have not been as prominent in, but Google advertising, they are definitely trying to gear that up and wanting to see what kind of return we can get on that. I'm sure there's a lot of businesses. I see Facebook advertising a lot. So I know that that is definitely something that many businesses are trying to reach out to through like social media aspects. So social media is obviously, LinkedIn, for your more professional, we utilize Indeed. And Indeed actually is one that we really get most of our candidate flow from. So, and then we do, sponsor jobs, and that kind of keeps those jobs kind of pushed to the top. It's a small investment for the kind of candidate flow we'll see on Indeed. So, lastly, just kind of identifying new hiring goals. We did a complete scrub and revised new job descriptions, kind of, speeded them up, made them really look appealing, because that is something that we do share with our candidates that are going to be interviewing. So, making sure they're up to date and very clean, to make sure what we're sending out isn't something that we were sending out 2 years ago that maybe has changed. Kentucky and Works actually has a group that is doing like a job redesign, which is really amazing. It doesn't obviously apply to a lot of different roles that you can just redesign a job, but in this current environment, I think it's something worth looking at. If you do have the ability to say, hey, we have a really great candidate, they're lacking this, but they maybe have a strength over here. Can we redesign, that job to kind of fit, that current applicant or the applicants that you're seeing? So maybe it's a matter of kind of looking at your, job descriptions as a whole. Try to evaluate and set new skill set requirements. I think that's huge, especially again now, because you may have people that you're seeing, a lot of people that don't have a certain skill set that you're looking for. Is that something that's trainable? Is it something that you can do on site? Is it something that you can add to an LMS or a training process over a course of a 30, 60, 90 day for them to obtain that? So again, you just have to be open to change. When you find things that aren't working, then, don't completely flesh those ideas out. They may be great down the road, but you may have to just reach again in your toolbox and kind of roll with something new. And what works today may change in 30 days or 60 days. So, right now we're just really, candidate flow is really our biggest issue right now. I feel like we have attacked all kinds of marketing strategies and redesign strategies. So we're just trying to figure out the best way to get candidate flow in. So back to the old fashioned cold calling and just reaching out to candidates and just, trying to make as much noise as we can over here to gravitate at least these last little like 60 jobs we have to fill. So.
That is great, Christy. I know some people have said, well, when I get a good candidate in, if they don't match the job, then I start thinking, well, what might they do? Because I might be able to use them somewhere else. Or like you said, maybe I need to alter the job slightly so I can use them, because good candidates are just too infrequent to pass up. So thank you for your input. Any questions coming in, Allison or Autumn? I didn't see much on chat, but John, you have any final comments about this?
Yeah, I just posted a comment here too, but I think, we're really seeing that it's a buyer's market for candidates right now across a variety of industries. So this is a manufacturing example, but our other clients work and operate in different spaces. And so I think for us, it's about trying to find a competitive edge to get candidates really interested in opportunities that your company has versus other companies. So how do you create that? And it's not just recruiting, guys. It's recruiting and marketing, a lot of times dancing together to create this campaign strategy, right? To get the right candidates in the door and find creative ways to make your voice be the louder, right? And be the ones at the front of the race and not the back of the race, getting those folks. So I think finding those creative opportunities now more than ever are really important. And Christy shared a lot of great initiatives that they're using, but certainly I think thinking outside the box is critical right now.
Right. Thinking outside the box, I want to say a word about Sazerac before we wrap up. They were one of the first distilleries to start doing hand sanitizer because they're bottling stuff every day. It's a liquid. And so that was kind of a good thing to help. They gave away a ton of that stuff. Now, for those you don't know, Sazerac, you may know them by their more common names like Buffalo Trace or Pappy Van Winkle or Blanton's or Eagle Rare. That's just 4 of their, I don't know, like almost 30 different brands that they're producing. And they also do a lot of things outside the bourbon area. So Christy, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to move right along now. We've got another great guest. Jim Trujillo is a CFP, a CCFS, a PPC. What is all that stuff? He is a certified financial planner. He's a professional planning consultant. And he's with Argy. Argy is a terrific company. They're based in Louisville. That's where they got started years ago, but they really expanded and they're all around the country now, a lot of the country. And Jim helps people figure out their finances and helps plan that. But the interesting thing about him, quite unique, he also has a degree in acting from the University of Kentucky Theater Program. So he utilizes his thespian skills to communicate, does a lot of communication for employers. He's working with over 75 different company plans and helps communicate those plans to employees so employees can appreciate all the value of those programs. So we asked him to come share today some things that he wants to talk about, student loan programs, the CARE Act, a variety of other things. So Jim, take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that great introduction. Yeah, so real quickly, today we're going to cover something that I think is very in line with the conversation we were just having. To give you a couple of different perspectives that I want to cover today. My own perspective, I am a millennial. I have been burdened with student loans. Another perspective that I can provide to you all, I work not just with the participants of the retirement plans that I work on, being a retirement plan advisor, giving them individual advice, hearing their concerns, one of those concerns always being, how can I save for my future if right now I'm having to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars every month on my student debt? How can I take advantage of this amazing benefit if I don't have the means to do it? And then the last perspective that I think I can share with you all is by working with the committees of those retirement plans, the business owners, the C-suite executives, who are making all of the decisions, not just around the retirement plan, but also around the benefits that are offered. A lot of the things that were said by Christy and Lyle, I totally agree with. Right now, the talent pool that is out there is dwindling. It's very, very small. It's hard to get that young, highly educated talent. And I think this is going to be one of the things that really you could consider right now that's not being overly utilized. You're looking at bringing on this talent, and a lot of them are not going to have heard of this yet, because as working essentially as a benefits advisor, helping these companies create these plans, haven't done it too many times, haven't seen it too many times. This is something that really could help you all stand out as you are continuing to try and attract that talent. So through today's quick presentation for you all, I want to cover just a couple of things, make sure you have these really important takeaways. Firstly, what is the Consolidated Appropriations Act, the CAA? It was really the big conduit that helped to make this employer-sponsored student loan repayment programs, something to consider for a long time. So I'm going to help you understand why it's important, who should consider it, and also where to start. I gave a pretty quick introduction to myself. And a lot of times when I introduce myself in these webinars that I give, I always say I'm a millennial. I know that's kind of a strange way to introduce yourself. You aren't doing that when you're out networking. But in the industry that I'm in, it's very important in the industry you all are in. It's important to understand different perspectives. If you're near retirement, this isn't going to help you. But if you're just graduating, or if you're a millennial, and a lot of Gen Xers as well, this is something that is very applicable, that is going to be top of mind. So I think, again, it's important that while we're looking at these types of benefits, understand who you're talking to and who you're trying to provide this to. I'm a husband and a father. And again, my day-to-day job is acting as a retirement plan advisor, 401k advisor. I'm out there working with companies, working with HR professionals to create, implement, and maintain the plans that they have, including these employer-sponsored repayment plans, as well as working with the participants, asking them the questions of how are you feeling financially? Where are you today? What do you think you could be doing differently, and what's on top of your mind? And here are some ways that I think you can get back on track. Jumping into some very scary statistics that increases every single year, unfortunately. These are the most current numbers that I could find. I want to share with you all those here. 1.6 trillion, that is the total amount of student debt that is out there. It is second only to mortgages. And combined, car loans and credit card loans are not $1.6 trillion. So it is climbing at an incredibly rapid rate, and really points back to this is something that is holding people back, holding your Gen Zers, holding your millennials back from saving, from taking advantage of those benefits that you've created that were your key benefits for attracting talent. Now people can't think about it because they have so much student debt. 45 million, that is the amount of people that it impacts in our country. The average student debt is now $28,000, almost $29,000 per person. That equates to, on average, almost $400, $393 a month. Now think about what your average contribution rate is per month. It's probably pretty close to that. These younger employees are not going to be able to think about how to come up with $400 to save into their 401k to take advantage of your really nice match. They're trying to just keep their head afloat when they're having to pay $400 a month on student loans. And this is shocking. The average term on a student debt right now is 20 years. So this isn't just Gen Zers. This goes up to Gen Xers. This is millennials. This covers a broad range of the employees that you were trying to go after, that I can guarantee in a lot of cases, they're going to have a good portion of student debt that they are trying to get rid of. So with this student debt crisis that we've all known about, Uncle Sam is really trying to step in and say, okay, this is a problem. It's affecting our workforce. It's affecting our economy. Let's figure out some ways to help alleviate this issue and this stress that is out there in the workplace. And it all really kind of started with educational assistance programs. These have been around for a while now, but very underutilized. And that is for one reason alone. It didn't ever allow individuals to pay off student loans. These educational assistance programs that would allow you to get a $5,250 tax-free benefit. It's an incredible benefit for both you, the company, getting to deduct that, as well as these employees who don't have to consider it taxable income. They were only able to use it to further their education. So think about that for 1 second. Up until just recently, you could offer this to an employee and say, thanks for coming on board. If you go back to school, or if you go and continue your education in any way, we'll give you $5,000 a year. But that doesn't help the people who have said, well, to get to this point, I have accumulated $30,000 worth of debt. That's where I need help. I don't need to learn anymore. I've learned to get to this point, and now I have this student debt on top of my mind. How are you going to help me with that? So in 2020, the CARES Act came out and helped to enhance the language around what an eligible expense is when it comes to these educational assistance programs. So before, again, it was only language of you can use it to buy books, go to school, get the supplies needed. So really just continuing your education. But what the CARES Act did was it broadened the definition to include student loans. It just so happened to occur, though, in the middle of a pandemic when people were not thinking about enhancing their benefits. So it was vastly underutilized again, and people were very, very worried. Sherm was very worried. Many HR professionals I talked about were worried because it was only supposed to last for 1 year to see how it would play out. Well, luckily, with the Consolidated Appropriations Act that Donald Trump signed into at the end of 2020, it is now extended to 2025. So going back to the statement I made, people haven't used this yet. It really has been an idea, but not a lot of companies had really grasped it and created services to it up until last year when they said, okay, this really could take off. This really could be the next big benefit. So what are we going to do? How are we going to implement it? How are we going to apply it? And when the Consolidated Appropriations Act said it's going until 2025, we're seeing a lot more traction. We're getting a lot more questions about it. I really think it's something that everyone should consider. And the reason why is we've created these benefits up until this point to help the vast majority of people, right? We have our medical insurance, we have our 401ks, we have time off and things like that. But coming out of the pandemic, people's priorities have changed. People are going to want and look at benefits very differently. And I think everyone who provides those benefits is going to have to really look at how they provide them differently too. So again, going back to perspectives, as you're creating these benefits, think about it. Who is my audience? There's the thespian in me. Who am I trying to talk to? Who am I trying to attract here? If it's your silent generation or your baby boomers, they want to talk about retirement. How am I going to retire? If it's Gen Xers and millennials and Gen Zers, it's student debt. How do I pay this off? How do I get rid of this? Because as I'm talking to my retirement plan participants and helping to create a financial roadmap for them, that's the first thing they always say is, I would love to be saving $10,000 a year into this 401k plan. I have no way to do that because I'm paying hundreds of dollars towards this student loan and it's not going away until I'm 40 years old. So what can I do about that? That's where people's minds are. That's what they want to talk about. And that's what's going to help you all attract that young talent, that young, highly educated talent that we're all trying to get to. And why it's so important, and again, I'm a millennial. I don't mean to keep putting that out there and say that we're the best, but we are the future. Millennials and Gen Zs are on track to grow the workforce from right now, 35% of the workforce is typically a millennial. By 2030, it's expected to be 75% of your population. What makes that really, really difficult, in addition to how much you're going to have to try and attract this talent, is that we're known as job hoppers, unfortunately. What that means is millennials are going to come on board very quickly. They're going to realize this isn't the place, the benefits aren't enough. The place across the street is offering me a little bit more or offering me these better benefits. In 2016, 21% of millennials had changed their job. That's 3 times the number of non-millennials. So they're going to look around. Well, what are they looking for? And some statistics are now showing that 86% would accept a job offer that offered a student loan repayment program. Think about that. If you're looking for that talent, and like I said, there's not many companies out there that are offering it yet. That's going to stand out. When you say, and just assume Gen Z, millennial, they're going to have student debt. That is going to help get them in the door. And most importantly, we all know it's really expensive when you hire someone and they leave within a couple of months and you have to start all over. Millennials stay 36% longer when they are offered these student loan repayment programs. So if you haven't been thinking about it, it definitely, hopefully, anyways, these statistics will start to get you thinking about it a little bit more. So who should consider this? Anyone, everyone. Again, coming out of this pandemic, people's perspectives are going to change. People's thoughts are going to change. The way you offer benefits is going to need to change too. If you are in a business that is trying to attract highly educated young talent, millennials, Gen Zers, you have to consider this. And where should you start? You should start by understanding you don't have to do this alone. I've helped a couple of companies work through the thought, and unfortunately, a lot of times they say that we have general and counsel, we can create the plan document, we'll run it through our payroll, we'll do it ourselves. You don't have to do that. Large companies are now seeing that this is going to be a trend in the near future, and that includes benefits consultants, retirement plan advisors, larger companies that act as record keepers. Fidelity has an incredible offering. There's another company out there that's very user-friendly, has great technology called Peanut Butter, great name. So just know that you don't have to do this by yourself. You don't have to draft this document or come up with the provisions. There's going to be a lot of great partners that would love the opportunity to help you get started. Again, advisors, consultants, do a little bit of research if this is something that your company is really considering. And just like you would do any other due diligence on a vendor, start to go through the process, see what's out there, see what you like, see what you don't, read the reviews, work with a consultant or an advisor to come up with what is going to be the right solution for the problem that you're trying to solve.
All right. Good work, Jim. That's very helpful. And it sounds like it's cutting edge. You know, we're going to have to learn more about this. Any questions? I didn't see any, so any final words, Jim, before we move on to our legal update?
I just really appreciate the time, you all. You know, if this is something you're looking to talk more about, here's a QR code you can scan. I'm happy to have a further conversation with you all about what this would look like for you and your company. Thank you again.
I'm going to scan that. What fun. All right. Jim, thanks a bunch. All right. Who's this next guy? What's his name? James M. Morris, Esquire. I've heard of him. I know he's been around a while. Jim, welcome back. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you. I'm Jim Morris. I'm new to this, so just bear with me as I go through everything. I know, you know, probably haven't done this before.
Yeah, right.
So Lyle, nice to meet you. Everybody else, nice to meet you. I really was hoping we'd get away from COVID and we'd start talking about other legal things. I will give you a little hint for the future. I'm going to be talking about marijuana. I don't know whether it'll be on the next one or the one after that, but we're going to start talking about some of the real issues HR is going to be dealing with, as marijuana is legal in some states and illegal in others. Illegal in the federal government, but not in state, and the fact that you have multiple states that are now protecting any employees from recreational. I've dealt with that. I started out back when it was just 2 states giving guidance and policies. If you haven't looked into that lately, it is a really big problem. So those are the kind of things I thought we'd be doing. I thought we'd be doing some sexual harassment discussion, some discrimination discussion, some other issues. I'm going to talk about some of those things today on like remote working, since we're dovetailing with the discussion on trying to find people to work and so on. But we've got a lot of things we'd like to cover, and I can't get away from COVID. So, all right, here goes. First of all, before I get into the Maze legal tidbits, I thought I would cover the question, the hot topics that are on there. So let me pull this down here for you. Sorry. Let me show you this first. So question in the chat was, where are we with the governor's order? I don't have anything on a slide with this because it's so confusing right now. I don't know where we are. I hate to always admit that, but that's where we are with this particular discussion. So we do have an executive order from the governor as of May the 6th. When you look through the executive order, I'm going to cover it this way. I'm going to skip the things that don't matter because this very first part is all legal language because the governor got chastised by some federal courts for not justifying the basis for the executive orders. So the first full page talks about, and part of the second talks about how important it is to do what he's doing. The whereases are what you don't really care about. So then you have the now therefore. The governor, and this is all legal language, has declared certain things. One, what a face covering is. So if you've ever wondered, here's your legal definition of a face covering. He then talks about going to the CDC for more guidance, but the CDC links are way out of date. So I don't think that it's appropriate to reference that, but that's what we have. So the question that was asked was about wearing a mask. Number one, if you've seen the people that are wearing them over their mouth but not their nose, that is not appropriate under Kentucky law. And there is a way to report all those people. I called it the tattletale law. If you really want to report people, go ahead. It's on there. But you are still required to wear a mask anytime you are inside any retail establishment, grocery store, pharmacy, hair salon, blah, 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 all the way down through every single thing that is inside. And outside, well, we're getting to that, hold on. Transportation, and then this one, while in outdoor public spaces or venues with more than 1,000 people in attendance. Outdoor spaces with fewer than 1,000, wearing a face covering is recommended. So there's your definition of what you have to do. Here are the exceptions, and this is what raised the question in the discussion forum. Small groups of individuals in a private business or home in which all individuals present have received the final dose and have 14 days after. Two huge problems with that. Number one, small groups is not defined. Looked everywhere on the website, did a full search of the COVID, KY, or KY, COVID, so on and so forth. Nowhere on their website. They talk about large groups. They define those. They do not define small groups. So there's going to be some issues with that. The other issue here is this, and we're going to cover some of this here in a minute. You cannot, in a business setting, start scrutinizing people who have or have not been vaccinated. You can ask, but you can't dig. Can you ask customers? That gets really into a dicey area. There are some anti-discrimination rules out there that we're going to talk about. And right now, the anti-discrimination rules are all over the map. We are getting conflicting information, conflicting policies, lack of guidance, lack of follow through, and it's actually getting kind of embarrassing in terms of there is an edict that was issued in the executive order on January 20th that I've talked to you about with regard to the mask mandate. They were going to pass a new standard. They haven't done that. Why? Because they can't figure out how to do it, but they're not following up what they're going to do instead of. They've announced that they now have a final policy. It's now with the final writing policy group inside of the White House, and they haven't come out with it, and nobody's allowed to see it. It's all on sequester. So we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know when it's going to happen. But you as an employer are mandated to follow this emergency temporary standard that we're going to talk about immediately, and it applies everywhere. And the problem that you're having with like this policy on the governor's executive order is it impacts all kinds of federal law we're going to talk about here in a minute, because this is a mandate. And a mandate then becomes part of what you must do as an employer. So this testing of employees before the workday, during the workday, after the workday, or on their own time, just wait. It's going to get really interesting here in just a minute. So if you need more information on the policy that the governor has issued, the executive order, it's on the website. It talks about the things that you don't have, when you don't have to have a mask on. If you're in a swimming pool, you don't have to wear a mask. Yep. It's actually right there. It has other things in there, but it really was a huge announcement to do nothing but small group with no definition. So it doesn't really give us a lot to go on. So let me cover the things that I do have information on that you need to know about. So multi-state compliance, I put this in here because of Christy's discussion on hiring people. I have talked about this back in, I think it was May or June. I talked about the problems that you might have with multi-state compliance for payroll, for out-of-state remote, who's working where are you based, how are you handling things, and so on. So a couple of issues to keep in mind with what we talked about on the HR side just a little bit ago. So what are the employer's legal obligations for remote employees? What if those employees are working out of state? A lot of people are not thinking about that. So what if you have a Cincinnati-based company? You hire somebody in Kentucky because, or Indiana, or vice versa, because what does it matter? They're working from home. I really don't care. I don't care whether you log in from Florida, from Texas, from Puerto Rico, doesn't matter. Well, it does. Because you also have to comply if you meet certain standards with local or state leave entitlement. If you're not familiar with that, take a look at like Chicago, or for that matter, take a look at your minimum wage. So the DMV area where I have a business that was located, that's the DC, Maryland, Virginia triad. Minimum wage is $15. It's been $15 for the last 5 years. You must comply with that if you have people working from home and that is their primary base where they're working, as long as you meet other criteria under local law. Same thing goes, like I said, wage and hour, leave. Chicago has special leave for pregnancy leave, FMLA leave. They have their own wage and hour. They have all kinds of city-specific, Cook County-specific. Each one of your localities have other types of protections built in. I'll go as far back as, back in the day, I was the very first person to challenge, in the state of Kentucky, I lost by the way, gender equality. I filed an LGBTQ before Q existed, and I did it based upon Lexington's. Because Lexington had a fairness ordinance before the state did. A former Supreme Court justice, while they were in the city or in the county government, or in the county Fayette Circuit Court, denied that and indicated that there's no way that gender would ever be protected for same-sex discrimination. And if that was announced now, that person would not have ever been elected to the Supreme Court because of the laws, the way they change and so on. But The reason why I mention that to you is every single local ordinance has their own requirements, and you have to start looking into that. Because if you have people working from Louisville, from Lexington, from Indianapolis, from Cincinnati, from Chicago, from anywhere else, you have to comply with their local laws as long as it defines that they are an employee working within that geographic area. The other thing is, who do you pay for unemployment? Where do you pay your unemployment? It wouldn't be in Kentucky if they're working in Ohio. You can get criminally sanctioned as well as civilly for not paying the unemployment benefits. So you need to figure out whether they qualify as an employer or employee. I'll give you one other example just by way of example. And this is all changing now because, and you're going to hear about this in the PRO Act here in a minute and the new executive order, but definition of an independent contractor is different based upon what state you're in. So I had a case involving Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania said at the time, this is a few years ago, independent contractors are employees for purposes of both union, which is a huge buzz issue that you're going to hear about, as well as for unemployment issues. So even though I had a client who was an independent contractor under Pennsylvania law, they qualified as an employee. Under Kentucky law, absolutely not. But it all depended on where the employee was physically located, where the company was located, and which contract law applied. You've got to start thinking about these things, having people working from home. So we've talked about the changes in employer-employee and how they qualify. Think about your workers' comp. Which state are you paying? Which state do you need to pay? I will let you know, typically, without getting into individual things, wherever the employee is working is where you need to be paying the workers' compensation. That comes into play. We talked about this way back at the day one of this meeting, week one. In the middle of March, I talked about the need to physically have pictures of a person's workplace at home, making sure you are providing chairs, workspace, safe workspace. Are they working when they go up and down the stairs to go to the bathroom, or is that on their work break? Do you tell them that they're not allowed to leave their workstation? Because if you don't have policies in place and Susie Q goes down the stairs of her house, slips and falls and breaks her neck, that's a workers' comp policy. Yes, you are responsible for the safety under OSHA of any workplace, including someone's home. Unless you tell them you're stuck here until your break. You go to the bathroom on your own break. You go get lunch on your own break. You don't go up and down stairs. You're not allowed to go running through your house. You're not allowed to have kids playing around you and other things around you because that could invade safety and so on. But keep in mind, your workers' comp has to be paid for the location. Typically where the employees work is localized, not where you are. Unemployment insurance, same thing. It's where the work is. Well, actually, there's a combination you need to figure out. You have to comply with interstate requirements. Most of them have a work share agreement between the states. Where's the work performed? Where's the base of your operation, and where are they receiving their direction from? This could result in the person working from Cincinnati, Ohio, but you're paying Kentucky unemployment. Why? Because the work may be performed in Ohio, but the base of operations and the direction that's being provided are both in the state of Kentucky. It's all dependent on the law of where the employee is actually physically working from and where your base of operations are. So you've got to get together with somebody and make sure you have that all covered. As a reminder, always keep in mind you have to adhere to FLSA obligations for remote workers. What does that mean? This, whoops, my highlighter's not on. This right here means make darn sure you know that you're telling hourly employees your work schedule is from 8:30 to 4:30. Your email comes in after 4:30, you're not responding to it. You're not allowed to continue to work because you feel like you're getting behind. Why do you have to tell your employees that? Because if you allow them access to their computer and you allow them to work from home beyond the hours, and you don't mandate to them you're only allowed to work 40 hours a week, you have to pay overtime. Even if you didn't know that they were doing it, even if you didn't expect them to do it, even if you didn't realize realized that they were responding to emails. If you don't put a block on them as to their hourly schedule, you will be responsible for all of their overtime. So you have to build that into your policies. What other concerns do you have? Out-of-state payroll tax obligations. You have to verify each state. And then this one right here is the critical. Why are businesses leaving New York State, New York City? Because the taxes are out of this world. If you have a, quote, sufficient nexus to doing business in the state, you have to pay state taxes. That includes corporate tax, that includes franchise tax, that includes sales tax. It includes all kinds of things. So you need to make darn sure that you're covering through your policies and procedures, your handbooks and so on for any of your remote employees, where they are and are not allowed to work, what they are and are not allowed to do, and whether you are simply having them log into your Kentucky-based system, Indiana-based, don't care where you're located, make darn sure that you have them only logging in from their location and all of their work is centralized in your location in Kentucky instead of New York. You don't want to be hit with extra taxes. It is becoming a big issue because every state wants to collect their taxes, every business wants to not be collected on. So you need to be looking into that. So basically you need to take several steps. You need to conduct an audit of your employees. You need to determine who is working remotely out of state, and you need to make darn sure you're complying with all of those states' requirements. You need to develop and maintain a robust remote work policy, and you need to consider consulting insurers to seek extraterritorial insurance coverage. You don't want to find out the hard way that you don't have workers' comp coverage for somebody that slips and falls down their steps in Cincinnati because you forgot to tell your workers' comp coverage carrier that you had at-home employees in Cincinnati. So always reach out to your insurance coverage provider and make sure you have that policy in place. All right. That's kind of the dovetail into mine. We're going to flow through these pretty quickly, but I wanted you to understand we've got a lot to cover in the next 4 slides. There's a lot of information out there. So on April 26th, the DOL posted new FAQs regarding COVID-19. This is critical to understand. There's a difference between doing things during the workday and doing things before the workday starts. How that impacts you is still up in the air because our DOL, I guess during the transition of administrations, can't seem to get their act together and come out with an FAQ regarding COVID-19 that is comprehensive. It frustrates me because it should be rather simple to say. I'll tell you where my recommendation is. I've talked to you before about donning and doffing. It came up, that's putting on and off. It's a really cool legal term, but basically what it means is back in the day it had something to do with chicken processing plants, and this actually was Western Kentucky related. People who were required to put on their clothing, protective masks and clothing before the day started were putting on and taking off their clothing before their day started. Because it was mandatory that they put it on, the employer didn't want to pay them for that. You don't get paid until you show up on the floor starting to chase chickens around. The FLSA came in and said, whoa, hold on. You're paying hourly employees to put on, or paying them to do this. You're requiring them to put on protective gear, and you're not paying them for the time it takes them to put on and take off their clothes. They hit them with wage and hour penalties, time and a half, triple damages and so on. They called it a donning and doffing of clothing mandatory for the workplace. Same principle applies to COVID. If you require someone to do a temperature check and a health screening during the workday, you must pay your employees. This is brand new from the DOL, but it's what I've been telling you all the way through. If you require someone to get a test, this is a COVID-19 test to see if they're positive during the workday, you must pay them for that test. If you require, that should say off, not of. Sorry for the typo. If you require someone to get a test on their day off, you must pay your employees. Why? Because you're mandating they use their time off to go get a test. If you if you require someone to be screened before their work day starts, you must pay that employee, quote, if the task is required to perform, if the task is required to be performed, it is necessary for the work that is performed. What does that mean? Well, guess what? They didn't define it. However, I'm going to pull up something here. Sorry, got to find it. We have an executive order from our governor that requires you to screen still daily. You have another executive order, another safety at work policy, healthy at work. We put this in minimum requirements. Number 8, you still should do daily temperature and health checks. They may be either self-administered or administered by the entities prior to the workplace entry. Self-administered may be performed at home. Go to the CDC for guidance. Well, I told you all, it's really, really crazy. The CDC guidance hasn't been updated, so their recommendation to go to the CDC is kind of silly. My guidance to you is this. You must do the pre-shift testing and screening under state law by a governor mandate that has not been set aside as part of the minimum requirements. But wait, Jim, it says should. Yes, it does say should. And where it says should, I was trying to pull it back up. Give me a second. Where it says should, and we talked about this as well. Lost it. I had it up on the screen. Give me a second. Well, all right, I'll find it and put it down there again. Where it says should, the problem is that it then says you must assist public officials, this is in paragraph 9, if an employee or customer tests positive or is exposed. This assistance includes, now remember, this is a must assist. Assistance includes, but is not limited to, providing work schedule, workstation, hours or shifts worked, and the exposure potentially occurred, and the names and contact information of the other individuals potentially exposed to the virus. So my suggestion or my recommendation to the customers I'm providing services to right now, my clients, is because this says pre-shift testing and screening, if the task is required to be performed and is necessary for the work performed, it is necessary by virtue of the governor's mandate that you must do this and keep track of it. So my guidance is pre-shift testing is the same as post-shift testing, because once they show up at your workplace to be tested, and this is the bizarreness of the way that this is written, if they show up at your workplace and you start asking them, then they have subjected themselves to their master's requirements, which is the employer, so they're now at your service once you start asking them the health screening. So once they're under your control, you have to pay them anyway. So if they show up, now you have to pay them. I don't think that you can have a pre-shift testing and screening, because once you start that question, they're under your control. They're required to adhere to your policies. Well, wait, what if you just do it at home? Well, okay, if you require them to do testing, they literally say, if you do it on their day off, you must pay them. Well, it's the same thing for doing the screening. If you're requiring them to do it from home, they're suffering, that's a legal term, but they are suffering for their master at that time, which means the employer has to pay for the time it takes them to screen. My heavy recommendation is pre-shift testing and screening be paid. Why? Because the FLSA is coming after all of you, the new DOL, the new FLSA, the new pro-union, anti-employer policies. You don't want to be on the wrong side of this. So this is what's not answered. What are the necessary for the work being performed, and what about governor mandates? What about the in-home screening questions? What about waiting for elevators in a high-rise building? Now, that's really critical, because if you are requiring people to be screened outside in a tent before they get into the building, they start their work as soon as you start screening them. Then if you only have 2 people in an elevator at a time and they're standing there waiting, my recommendation is you don't mess around. They need to be paid while you're waiting. What about contact tracing inquiries and follow-ups? Are they going to be paid for that as well? The answer is pretty much to each one of those 4 bullets. I would say yes, because FLSA says as soon as they are required to suffer at your convenience and not for their own purposes, pay them from beginning to end. I would not mess around with that, but they need to straighten that up. They need to address this pre-shift testing. The way they did it is very confusing and very not really great. OSHA came out with guidance on April 21st. If you require employees to get a vaccine as a condition of employment, any adverse reaction is a work-related and recordable incident on your 300 forms. Means that you must record that as a work-related. It's recorded as a new case instead of a condition resulting from previous work-related illness. And you must meet 1 or more of the general recording criteria: days away from work, transfer, medical treatment. Again, let me state that. If you require your employees to get vaccinated and they get sick as a result, you must record that. If you recommend it, then you do not need to record the adverse effect, but then they go on to say, however, keep in mind, quote, OSHA is exercising its enforcement discretion to only require the recording of adverse effects, but not saying that you shouldn't do it. It then goes on to say, by the way, employers should generally be responsible for doing everything that we tell them to do, and this is just a suggestion that you don't have to. It's kind of scary because they can hit you for not doing it, even though it was a suggestion that you don't have to. It is an employee's choice to accept or reject. It cannot affect performance ratings. And also, an employee who chooses not to receive the vaccine cannot suffer any repercussions. So you can't discipline, you can't affect performance, you can't suggest that they can't go out and work. It's becoming a huge issue, because what is a voluntary and what is an unvaccinated employee, and what's suffering a consequence? So, for example, Lyle has people he's placing. Christy said they're trying to recruit people. What if the placement agency, what if the customer needing someone says, we can't accept anybody unless they've been vaccinated? But they have employees who want to go to work there, and they can't treat them differently based upon their refusal to not be vaccinated. It's a huge problem. So I'm picking on 2 people here, Allison and Autumn from Hannah Resource Group. What if one of them has decided for health reasons or religious reasons that they're not going to get vaccinated? They can't suffer any repercussions. I'll use Christy. Christy can't suffer any repercussions, but Cesarec has declared you can't come on site unless you've been vaccinated. I'm making all of this up. I'm not suggesting Cesarec has said that. But the problem comes in because Hannah Resource can't treat people differently, but their customers have said, whoa, 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 whoa. We can't have anybody come into the workplace physically until they've been vaccinated. It's a real problem. OSHA has not addressed it, the DOL has not addressed it, and the EEOC has not addressed it. It's all over the floor. It's a big problem. Keep in mind, though, these two bullets are huge because they are brand new OSHA directives. The decision to accept or reject cannot affect performance, and it cannot suffer any repercussions. So you have to build into your transfer of people going to a facility, going to a location, all of your reasonable accommodations, and you have to work with your customers or your clients, because you can't treat people differently based upon their decision not to be treated with the vaccine. Vaccine FAQs came out as well. So CARES Act, does it only apply to small employers? No, large employers also must comply, especially with vaccines and tests. You cannot charge your employees. You have to make sure all of your medical policies and so on don't charge your employees. Does offering PTO to employees to become vaccinated create an ERISA benefit? In most cases, no. But look down below, because the PTO to employees to become vaccinated, you can't treat people differently who have not been vaccinated or who cannot get vaccinated. So the next one, reimbursing employees for out-of-pocket expenses. There should not be any out-of-pocket expenses related to getting vaccinated, so keep that in mind. The CARES Act and other recently enacted laws have made it very clear you cannot charge employees for any vaccinated costs, so make that clear to your employees. Should you limit your vaccine incentive programs to 2021? With all of the unknowns, this is an unanswered question, but with all of the unknowns, I would highly recommend that you consider continuing it into 2022 pending further federal guidance, because they haven't given us any. What do you do for PTO hour incentives under the ADA and Title VII? That's religious and medical. We talked about that before. You cannot discriminate against any employees based upon their religious beliefs. And if you weren't paying attention a couple of months ago, religious beliefs under the current rules that just got announced at the end of January, religious discrimination is the belief or the absence of belief of anything that you believe or don't believe, whether you believe it or not. Yep, it was intended to be that sarcastically inane, because that is what the new policy is. Religion is anything that any individual closely holds true. Whether it's a religion or not, whether anyone else believes in it or not, or whether they claim to be, for example, Presbyterian. I'm a Presbyterian. My Presbyterian belief is different than my stated Presbyterian belief system, and I believe that I shouldn't eat food during the week. You can't discriminate against me, even though it is not a true religious belief of whatever belief system I'm a party to. It's individualized to the individual, and there is no way to know what it is. But if anybody says, I truly believe, I have a religious belief in whatever it is, you have to allow them to do whatever it is that they believe within the Title VII protections. I have asked this sarcastic question. We'll get into this at some point in the next year, I believe. What if my closely held belief, and no, it's not, so please don't say that it is, but what if my closely held religious belief is the KKK, or racism, or gender discrimination, or make it up? You can't discriminate against somebody because of their individualized religious belief, and yet I think it's absurd. But that's what it currently says. So the question here is, can you provide PTO hours, and what do you do for those individuals who are ADA or any kind of stated religious belief, or they religiously believe they shouldn't get the vaccine? The answer is you have to come up with an alternative accommodation for those individuals. So if you're paying PTO for people who are getting the vaccine, you have to come up with some other religion and medical limitation for those individuals who cannot or will not get the vaccine. How do you do that? They're not providing us any guidance. So my suggestion is don't provide PTO unless you're willing to do it to those individuals who are not able to get vaccinated, but they're going to use their PTO for some kind of health benefit. Let them go get a walk, pay them PTO to get a walk, to go do something else that would be good for their health. I don't know. They're not giving us any guidance on that. Could a vaccine incentive be included in the existing wellness program? Yes, but then you have to be very careful with it, because if you do it under an EAP, but you don't allow employees who cannot engage in it, you're going to be in trouble, and that's Q7 here. So incentives are offered through a wellness plan or participation-only program? Probably not, because you can't treat people differently who have a religious or medical, and that would be considered discrimination if you're offering a pizza party or $250 and somebody can't qualify and you say, sorry, you can't have it. So you have to offer it in different ways. They promised on April the 15th new guidelines on vaccine incentives, but they have not delivered those to us. So that's a big problem. Next, executive order. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but if you have a federal contract at all, if you've provided any kind of federal contract services, be aware of this for several reasons. It's a new executive order, it's on April 27th, must be $15 an hour. It is being phased in. It applies to any procurement contracts for services or construction, a Services Contract Act, contracts for concessions, federal property or lands, and related to offering services for federal employees, dependents, or to the general public. It only applies to employees who are, quote, working on or in connection with a covered contract. That is defined under the old Obama executive order. This supplanted the old Obama executive order for federal contractors, and it supersedes all parts of that because of the $15 an hour. It goes into effect for new solicitations on January 30th, and it must be triggered by March 30th, 2022 for all new contracts. It does not impact current contracts, but it is, quote, strongly encouraged for existing contracts and new solicitations prior to January 30th. So keep that in mind as well. You're going to get a lot of pressure from your federal contractor services provider. It phases out the lower minimum wage for any tipped employees by 2024, and you're no longer allowed to pay workers with disabilities at a different wage. It's all going to be $15 across the board. It does apply to all subcontractors. You'll have to guarantee that as well. And it directed the Department of Labor to issue new regulations implementing this on or before November 24th. So we'll update that when they've given you more information. Beltway news. This is what I thought would be a one-page, and then we would talk about other things, but it's so much stuff going on that I had to cover it all on the other ones. So this new executive order, this is huge, and if you haven't heard about this, and you have any chance of anything being unionized, you need to be paying attention. You need to be trying to lobby your current legislative House or senator, because your congressman and senator are going to be voting on this. It's going to impact every business like you've never seen before. So, new executive order, April 26th, created a task force. And if you are HR for any size business, you need to listen to this. The task force under executive direction was to, quote, encourage worker organizing and collective bargaining. That's called union. And to promote unionization in, quote, areas of the country with hostile labor laws. In other words, any state legislators that have passed pro-employer policies, this is designed to target areas of the country with hostile labor laws. That's Kentucky. Because our legislature has established pro-employer, this is designed to target that to make right-to-work states. They're going to change the laws to get rid of right to work. What does that mean? What do you mean by right to work? There are policies in place. I had a friend who used to work for Kroger. If you worked for Kroger You are required as part of your paycheck to have a certain amount of your paycheck taken from you, whether you are part of the union or not. And it was required to pay to the union a certain amount. That will now become the law again, because they will force the right to work out of the laws, and they will enforce pro-union laws. What else does this mean? Under the NLRB, there are pro-employer and pro-employee sides. The employers, and this is where you have to get into employers need to be trained on what they can and can't do. And we've talked about the tips and the threats, intimidation, surveillance, and prosecution, or what you can't do. And that's where I've done multiple training. That's going to become super important, because anyone who could possibly be unionized is going to be affected by this new executive order. They must come up with this within 6 months. They have to figure out, quote, how to promote worker organization and bargaining in the public and private sectors and to increase union density. Basically, that means everything's going to be pushed to have unions. Secret balloting will be there again instead of out in the open. Calling for union votes will be allowed instead of without any traction, and the employer's not allowed to know what's going on. That is a massive change. Along with that, keep in mind the PRO Act, which is on the fence right now in the Senate. There are 3 senators holding out on the PRO Act. If that gets adopted along with this executive order, you're going to see a tremendous unionization across the entire country in all sectors. PRO Act, like I said, the 2 senators out of Arizona and 1 senator out of Virginia. No, it is not Senator Manchin. He has agreed to the PRO Act. There are 3 Democrat senators that are holding up the PRO Act. If that gets adopted, that's going to change. It's called Protecting something organization, I'm sorry, I just went blank. Oh, Protecting the Right to Organize. Here it is, right down there. It's hit a snag. If that gets adopted along with this executive order, you all are going to need a lot of assistance. The DOL announced on May the 5th, independent contractor rule, set aside the Trump era rule, and this impacts all of your gig workers. Lyft, Uber Eats, Uber, anyone who is doing contract work, they now probably will be considered employees of those. So you're going to see the prices of Uber and so on go through the roof. You're also going to see unionization efforts there. And it's been a big push from the NBA, NFL, WNBA, MLB. Yes, those are all unions. If you didn't realize that, all of those employees are part of a union, and they've all been pushing for the pro-union, and that's all going to change as well. The immigration for the USCIS has canceled or is easing most of its canceling biometrics. For those that didn't realize what that was, when you walked across the border, which is wide open right now, they were trying to get fingerprints, but now they've decided they just don't have time for that, so people are just free to go. What that does is, for you who are trying to get people in under the H-1B visas and other types of work-related visas, they were so far behind on their handling of any of the visas that they basically said, we're just going to get rid of biometrics, so now they don't even have that left. Hopefully you'll see the backlog lift on your employment visas, but that also means people coming in are not even being screened. If you haven't looked at it lately, you ought to look at the border. There's a picture that you can look at. If you're trying to get out of our country to go into Mexico, there's a 3 to 4 hour wait. You want to come into the country right now, you're free to come in without any wait at all. It's pretty bizarre. American Families Plan has been proposed. This is part of the President's State of the Union address that was given. It's supposed to have free universal preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds, free 2-year community college, mandatory federal paid leave for families, mandatory sick leave, federal sick leave. It will change and extend the unemployment insurance as well, and there's a federal subsidy for child care costs. That's all. These last four will definitely impact all employers. The first two could impact it to the extent that you're trying to provide any kind of services to your employees like reimbursement and so on. This is pretty much guaranteed to pass on a party line vote. The only one that's waiting that we haven't heard from yet is Senator Manchin from West Virginia. But those things will have drastic impact. Not only that, but it has to be paid somehow. And the super secret to how all of these things are going to be paid is basically your employers or the businesses' corporate tax rates going to go back up to the 38% or above, and that's going to have a big impact on things. The last one is the emergency temporary standard that I referenced earlier. That is the mask mandate. It has been finished, but you can look at it. They're still going through their scrutiny on how to write it. It's in the editing phase. It's in the OIG's office for how are we going to announce this in a way that people will actually listen to. I know there was a lot there. I apologize. I think I'm 6 minutes over what we thought we would get. I think I'd said it'd be an hour and a half. No, I'm 3 minutes early. So that's it. There's your business one. We're going to shut this down. In terms of we're not shutting everything down this quick, but get your business codes and so on. Candace, on the independent contractors as defined in the FLSA, IRS does not trump local laws around contracts. Not positive, I fully understand, but FLSA and the IRS does trump local laws. Local laws come in last. You must, the FLSA is the basement, things can build on the top. I'm not positive as to what the independent contractor is that you're referencing under local laws, so I'm sorry. The ones with regard to, there was one on there on
Did you see the one on
subsidies? Yep, I'm sorry, who said something?
Go ahead. I'll give you a couple once you get, go ahead and take the one you're looking at.
So the COBRA subsidies definition, they came out with an FAQ, but they really did not define what the reason for gross misconduct, and they didn't really help with a whole lot of things. What they came out with, and it's on the OSHA website, and I'll dump it in there when I get a chance. I had not gotten much feedback from anyone that they were interested in the COBRA subsidy, so I apologize. But it was, the way that they wrote it was so lacking that the FAQs really didn't have FAQs. I may come out with some guidance for you all midweek on that, but they promised us more and they really didn't do much. So throw some of these at me and I'll answer them.
All right, Jim, there's one on there about break rooms. People wanting to reopen their break rooms and they haven't done it. They've closed them down since sometime last year. So
as long as it's under 1,000 people, then you can do it, but you have to maintain social distancing, the 6-foot social distancing still, unless you can demonstrate that everybody is vaccinated. You have a right to ask your employees, and we talked about this a while back, about whether they've been vaccinated. If someone says no, you have to be very careful about going any further, because you could possibly trigger a GINA-protected question into, well, yeah, I have a family genetic condition, or, you know, I suffer from lupus and I've been recommended not to get it. Somebody could just disclose to you HIPAA-protected or genetic information that you're not allowed to know. So you need to maintain that separately. Perhaps have someone in your HR that's asking the questions, but they have nothing to do with supervision. so that you don't have supervisors that are aware of any of the genetic information that could be voluntarily disclosed by the employee, and then a lawsuit because you relied upon that. So that's how I would handle it.
Okay, cool. Hey, you talked about we still need to be testing people when they come in the door. What if we tell them they have to go get a test? Do we have to cover their time for getting the test?
Yep.
Just the test?
Yep, you have to, no, you don't cover, here's the thing, you're not paying for the test because the test should be free everywhere.
Right, yeah.
But if you require someone to go get tested on their day off or time off, you have to cover them, you have to cover their time if you require it.
I mean, it's probably a day they come to work. You won't let them in because you're concerned. You send them away. You got to pay them for that time.
Yes, you do. If you are requiring them to go get tested before they come back, the new policy is you have to pay them. Not new. This is something that we talked about as well. But you have to pay them for their time at work and their time going to be tested, because that's something that you're requiring before you return to work.
All right. There's a big long one in here from somebody. You want to take a look at that? I haven't even read it all.
Is that the one regarding recruitment challenges?
Now, this is the suspension of biometrics will apply to form da-da-da.
Yeah, well, that was one. You're correct. The biometric for non-immigrant status, that's one of them. But if you look at their website, they actually came out and said that they were not just suspending on one, they had an across-the-board step to start suspending multiple biometrics. So the one you're talking about is a non-immigrant status. They have another one for a non-resident family. They've stopped that one as well. Then they had the generalized announcement that they are doing across the board easing of biometrics. So there are tremendous number of biometric lifts that they're putting in place. The one you're talking about was with just one form, but then they came out and said, yeah, we're doing it pretty much across the board. So there was one about recruiting challenges. If you have an applicant fail a pre-employment drug test. So let me tell you my stance on all of those testing. We did functional capacity evaluations for employees. We also did drug testing for employees. But you run into a huge problem doing pre-employment testing of people, because you have certain rights that you're not allowed to do certain testing. There are a lot of, and this gets back to the state-by-state specifics as well. There are certain states you cannot discriminate against somebody for using drugs. Like Denver has allowed mushrooms. They're actually legalizing heroin. They've legalized marijuana. So there are certain cities that have passed ordinances that say you can't discriminate. But what you have to do is you have to build it into, and this gets into, if you need help with this, let me know. But you have to build it into a post-offer pre-placement testing. So you offer employment to the person saying, hey, willing to hire you, now I need to drug test you for the specific position we're putting you in. Now that means you have to have a job description. The job description needs to identify why it would be critical for this person not to be using this specific drug or not to be testing positive for the drug. Then you have to be careful that it's actually active in the system, so you can no longer do the hair follicle testing, because if you do that, that can go back 6 months on the marijuana and some of the other tests. It has to be more actively related. But you have to be careful with that pre-employment testing, whether it's for lifting, bending, twisting, carrying. Those things need to be post-offer pre-placement testing. We've successfully beaten back challenges on that, but you have to be very careful with how you build those tests. Okay, and it says, to clarify, we do perform drug tests post-offer. So once you've done those testings, if you have policies built in place that the person can't be placed by the employer or by the client, yeah, you have the ability to not place them for rehire for a certain amount of time, depending on where they're located. If they're located in a state that says you can't discriminate based upon marijuana use, you have to be careful about that particular refusal to place. It's going to get really crazy on drug use because every state has different ones. Stringent anti-marijuana, we follow the federal. It is illegal under federal, and so it is illegal in the state of Kentucky as well. It has been bizarre having a company in DC where it's illegal under federal, but then DC is governed by federal, but they have local mayor, and the mayor and the city council passed a policy saying it's legal here, but it's illegal under federal, and federal governs the city. It was really incredibly crazy. Yeah, and the state by state marijuana, be careful with that legality state by state, because one, it changes. Two, there are fine nuances to what each state requires. And three, some of the cities have gone even further. Seattle, Denver, Chicago, New York City has passed it just now as well. It's all over the map. So if you are a multi-state, you really need to be careful with how you handle that. And I will tell you this as well. I did this for one client. Multi-state training right now is insane. Trying to come up with which state's training is required versus recommended. Mandatory training, whether you have an employee just go to a local like conference. Depends on how long they're there, but certain cities are requiring training. So be careful about what you're doing with this remote work. There's a lot to learn out there, and if you find, if you're not doing it carefully, you could find yourself on the wrong side of it. I tried to cover as much as I could. I know there are some others that will need to be addressed. So if someone reports symptoms and we direct them to get COVID tested, we're now required to pay for their time. Yes. I know you love that because it's just more money out of your pocket. But now that the now that OSHA has come out and the DOL has come out and said if you require someone to get tested before they come back to work, you must pay them on their day off. This is where the interplay between the state and the federal is going to cost a lot of money, and they're not giving us a whole lot of guidance on it. The employees walk up to a station that is on their way into their job stations. They get zapped with a temp gun, answer the screening questions, and they move along. You got to pay them for the minute or less. Believe it or not, I've had that issue. It was in Indiana, not COVID related, but we had the issue, and the person challenged it was 53 seconds on average per day. They added it up over the year, and they filed a class action against us for the fact that they were shorted by 54 seconds a day times 300 days a year, or whatever it was they were working, times the 5,000 employees that work there, and the attorney wanted $500,000 for the pennies that the employees were able to get. So the answer is, if you require the employee to do anything, you have to pay them once they're doing it. Then the other issue is this: once they've answered your questions and they're done in the line, now they're walking to the clock to clock in. They're now working for you because you stopped them on their way in and had them answer questions. So the time between, becomes an issue because now you stopped them and started their workday. I've had people argue that the walking from the clock in to the floor is not time, and we've lost that one as well, and I've won that one. I don't want to be on the side of telling anybody to not pay people from the clock in station to their workstation, but I'm telling you, you're on the wrong side of it right now under COVID if you're requiring them to do that.
All right. Chase, you were tracking all the questions. Do we miss any?
I think you got them all.
All right, good work. Hey, I wanted to mention one thing. I think Fawn Mark, she's an employee at University of Kentucky, has dropped off already. But when we're talking about recruiting and all the different resources, she mentioned one that we didn't say anything about, UK Job Club. I don't know if you know about it, but UK has had this going for many, many years. And it's people that have lost their jobs and want to work with each other to hone their skills and their resumes and find jobs. And so it's free for employers to participate in it. They'll spotlight different employers that have jobs available, and they're always looking for jobs for these people. So it's kind of a neat thing. UK Job Club, you can look them up online. And I've spoken there several times and found it a great group of people from all walks of life and profession. Any other things that we need to wrap up?
Next one is a month. It's going to be the second Wednesday second Monday in June. We're doing these monthly now instead of bi-weekly. If you want to weigh in and tell us that you think that we waited too long, let us know, because we're trying to do this where we weren't drowning you with these meetings. This first one, there's still a lot of COVID things coming out, but our plan was to go to once a month. And we'll evaluate if anybody thinks that that's not enough. And hopefully we're going to get into some of the sexual harassment, have the whole thing related to sexual harassment, have a whole thing related to the drug testing issues that you're going to face, and pre-screening and so on. So keep those things in mind. Let us know policies and ideas that you want to cover. And just know that these things change week to week. It's hard to keep up with, but we're doing the best we can. That's it.
I've got let's see.